SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the smartest shows ever made, but the same thing cannot be said for its characters. You've got a fry cook who lives in a pineapple, a squirrel who's somehow surviving underwater, an insufferable pink starfish, and somehow, against all odds, this city functions. More or less. But for a show that's mostly about goofing around and being silly, SpongeBob actually has a surprisingly wide range of intelligence among its characters. Like, we've got the full spectrum here, from can barely count to 10, all the way up to making a reality-bending device. So I think that spectrum deserves a deeper look into it, which is exactly the reason I made these 7 levels of smartness in SpongeBob SquarePants. However, I already know the comments are going to be a disaster once you see where SpongeBob ends up on this list. I just know it. Needless to say, the ones who choose to think the least are living right at the bottom, level 7. Now, bottom level 7 is for characters who, I think the word dumb is putting it lightly. But what's worse is that most of them are genuinely unaware about what a bad decision looks like. They're just living under their own rock. And when I say that, you know there is a very obvious name in mind, Patrick Star. The starfish who loves to forget his own name mid-conversation and doesn't seem too bothered about it. Patrick is a special case because I think his stupidity is practically a lifestyle. He lives under a rock, literally and figuratively. What makes Patrick particularly fascinating, though, is how he always manages to make a situation worse and be very confident about it.
Patrick?
Yeah, SpongeBob?
I don't think this bubble can get much bigger.
I mean, Patrick never second-guesses himself, ever. But I think he's worth more than just laughingstock, because interestingly, he has these occasional brilliant moments. Moments where something genuinely wise comes out of nowhere. Like when SpongeBob got rich in Porous Pocket, and suddenly had a crowd of fake friends around him. Patrick was the only one who stayed when all that money was gone, and basically said,
There is no right or wrong when it comes to that stuff, SpongeBob. There just either is or there isn't.
And he was completely right. So the capacity is in there somewhere, it's just deeply buried under a rock. Now, staying on level 7 is Bubble Bass. If Patrick is lovable dumb, Bubble Bass is insufferably dumb with a side dish of jerk. Most people will remember him from Pickles, the guy who hid the pickles under his tongue just to humiliate SpongeBob and get free food. Which, okay, that takes some level of planning, I'll give him that. But that's basically the ceiling for this guy. Everything Bubble Bass does comes from a place of pettiness and ego rather than any actual intelligence. He's just being difficult, if you get what I mean. And being difficult doesn't make you smart. The reason he lands in level 7 and not higher is exactly that. And then, ironically, I think King Neptune deserves to be here too. Now this one might surprise some of you, because on paper, King Neptune is a god, ruler of the sea. You'd think that automatically bumps him up a few levels, right? But power and wisdom are two very different things, and Neptune, he's living proof of that. Take Neptune's spatula. A squishy yellow fry cook accidentally pulls a spatula out of ancient Greece, and instead of just congratulating him, Neptune spends the entire episode refusing to believe it. He even keeps making up new requirements on the spot, which is pretty childish. Ironically, for a king, Neptune couldn't measure someone without letting his ego get in the way first. And he's still lost, by the way, to one handmade Krabby Patty. But honestly, that's not even the worst of it. In Clash of Triton, we find out Neptune locked his own son in a cage on a floating island because Triton wanted to help mortals. He made a potion to cure diseases, and Neptune's response to this was exile. Then he spent years being miserable and depressed about the mistake that he made. And when Triton finally gets released and destroys half of Bikini Bottom, Neptune's response is to be proud of him, because at least now he's acting like a proper god. That's not even close to wisdom. This guy has had thousands of years to figure things out, and still hasn't. And finally, Narlene, Nobby, and the rest of their hillbilly family from Ukulele Bottom. Look, do I have to say any more? If you've seen my previous video on Bikini Bottom's most hated character, you already know where this is going. These are characters who exist almost entirely as a joke, about people who've never left their hometown and are proud of it. They're not evil people, they're just comfortably, enthusiastically unaware of basically everything happening around them. And honestly, good for them, I guess. Must be peaceful there. But yeah, level 7. And you know what's funny? The next group of characters aren't that far from Patrick in that sense. The difference is they've shown they have the ability to think, they just never really use it. SpongeBob being the most obvious example. And I already know what some of you are thinking. Wait, SpongeBob is in level 6? The main character? Really? Yeah, really. And I'll explain why. Now, look, SpongeBob isn't dumb. I want to make that very clear before anybody comes at me in the comments. He can cook, he can play instruments, and he's won awards for being a stellar employee. Those achievements alone put him above half of this list. But for all that capability, he is oblivious. Almost impressively oblivious. He can lead a ragtag band to one of the greatest performances in Bikini Bottom history in Band Geeks, and then do this. I think the best way to describe him is that he's got this blind belief that things will just always work out somehow. And honestly, for him, they usually do. But you can't really call that smart. And now that I think about it, SpongeBob might actually have the most panic moments out of anyone in this show. Well, other than Mrs. Puff, but we'll get to her. Every time something goes even slightly wrong, he just loses it completely. Which is funny, sure, but in this context, he seriously struggles with concise thinking under pressure. So, SpongeBob sits here at level 6. Now, the Bikini Bottomites as a whole pretty much share this locale. Honestly, they might be the most consistent level 6 residents on this entire list. These are people, or fish, who will collectively lose their minds over the most trivial thing imaginable. One rumor, one slightly weird smell, one person says something slightly off, and suddenly the whole city is rioting. Individually, some of them are perfectly reasonable, like Tom. Good guy, Tom. You deserved all the chocolate in the world. But the moment they're in a group, they're no smart colony. And then there's Larry the Lobster. Larry is a simple guy. He works out, he looks great, he knows it. And to be fair, within his lane, he functions perfectly fine. The thing is, he loves to push his muscle out on every lane. And Pearl? Well, I'll be quick here because honestly, I think she gets a pass. She's a teenager, and teenagers are supposed to make questionable decisions. That's what we do. And to her credit, she has more self-awareness than most characters at this level. She knows what she wants, she knows what she likes, she just doesn't always think through how she goes about getting it. She'll probably grow out of it. Probably. And finally, the Flying Dutchman. A ghost pirate with supernatural powers who has sailed the seas for centuries should be terrifying. By all accounts, this guy should be untouchable. Except, he's constantly entangled in some pretty questionable problems for someone of his stature. And that's because, for all his power, the Flying Dutchman is still a pirate at heart. He's obsessed with things that don't matter, like his image, his reputation, or whether people are properly scared of him. He gets emotionally wrapped up in the silliest things and completely loses the plot. Centuries of existence, and he still hasn't learned to step carefully. Or fly carefully. Whichever works. I honestly think he would be a great friend for Neptune. Now, the biggest difference that separates level 5 from the previous is that these characters have real functioning intelligence. It's just that it comes with a massive blind spot attached. And more often than not, that blind spot is what defines them just as much as the smarts do, like Mr. Krabs, for example. Mr. Krabs is an interesting person because, on the surface, the man runs a successful restaurant largely by himself. We gotta remember this man has no business degree. He's running it with raw instinct and an almost supernatural ability to smell a profit from 3 blocks away, which is actually pretty impressive. What's more, he knows how to read situations, as in the how to exploit it sense. And he is really good when it comes to squeezing almost every last cent of value out of anything, whether it's an employee, a trend, or a customer's desperation. Evil? Absolutely. But you can't call it stupid.
Thank you! Eat plenty of Krabby Patties!
But it all falls apart when it comes to relationships. His relationship with Pearl is the clearest example of this. He loves his daughter without question. He just has absolutely no idea how to show it in any way that doesn't involve spending as little as possible. And I think it goes beyond Pearl. There are moments where Krabs makes decisions so spectacularly short-sighted that you genuinely forget that this is the same guy who built a thriving business from almost nothing. Like the time where he fires Squidward over a stupid stealing accusation, or when he sold SpongeBob for 62 cents. Coincidentally, his lover belongs right here to Mrs. Puff. Now, she's a licensed boating teacher, which means she understands structure, curriculum, patience, these sorts of things. I mean, she has to, because her entire job is dealing with students on a daily basis. And for the most part, she handles it with a level of professionalism that, honestly, probably deserves more credit.
What's wrong?
Gotta sharpen my pencil.
But then, SpongeBob exists. It always baffles me when it comes to her dealing with SpongeBob, because she knows SpongeBob is the source of her suffering. She knows exactly what's happening and why. And, despite that awareness, her solutions keep getting progressively worse. We're talking outright criminal behavior at some point.
Let's get him!
Which is almost more damning than just being oblivious, right? Because oblivious means you don't know better. Mrs. Puff knows better, she just can't help herself when SpongeBob is involved. He's the bane of her existence. And I think that's exactly why the modern episodes try to give her some kind of good life outside of the boating school, by making her relationship with Krabs an actual canon thing. Like, the writers kind of felt bad for her. But yeah, 2 peas in a pod, both deserving of level 5. Now, everything we've talked about so far is pretty straightforward to diagnose. But the next one's trickier, because these are characters who genuinely have it all together. But there's just something that keeps getting in their way. And nobody embodies that more frustratingly than Squidward. We all painfully know Squidward is the butt of most jokes in this show. But there's a lot more going on than just misery and clarinet. Squidward, for one, is a cultured man at heart. He understands music, art, architecture. He has genuine taste and genuine knowledge to back it up. His vocabulary alone puts him several degrees above most of Bikini Bottom. Aside from that, Squid on Strike proved he could become a labor rights activist and deliver a whole passionate speech about workers and establishments that is frankly more coherent than anything Patrick has ever said in his entire life. And he's one of the few characters in this show who can actually read a situation correctly. Most of the time, when something is going wrong, Squidward sees it first, even when nobody is listening to him. The problem is ego, especially when it comes to Squilliam or SpongeBob, or the moment Squidward gets even a small taste of validation. All of that rational thinking just evaporates. Which is the great tragedy of Squidward, honestly. Both the universe and himself keeps getting in his own way, over and over again. So I'm comfortable putting him at level 4. Now, funny enough, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are here too, but for one specific reason. I want to talk about their younger selves first, because judging these two purely on their prime, they arguably belong much higher on this list. I mean, think about what it actually takes to be a superhero, protecting the 7 seas for decades. You need strategy, you need quick thinking, you need the ability to coordinate under pressure and handle threats that most people in Bikini Bottom couldn't even comprehend. The fact that they successfully did that for years, that's no small achievement. But that's not the version we get most of the time. The version we get is 2 elderly superheroes who can barely remember where they put their utility belts. Mermaid Man even confuses reality with his TV show on a regular basis. Meanwhile, Barnacle Boy is sharp enough to know exactly how far they've fallen, which, honestly, almost makes it sadder. So they land at level 4 because of what they were rather than what they currently are. I'm pretty confident the intelligence is still there somewhere, it's just retired, possibly permanently. And one level above Squidward and our 2 senile superheroes is for characters who know exactly what they're doing and are low-key about it. Personally, I would consider this level as the sweet spot. Gary is the obvious answer. For the most part, Gary is just SpongeBob's pet. He's cute, meows sweetly, and occasionally throws a tantrum about bath time. He's a simple guy. But then you get an episode like Sleepy Time. In Gary's dream, he's standing in a vast personal library, where he's quoting Emily Dickinson from memory and reciting limericks with the kind of casual confidence that suggests he just does this regularly. And when you think about it, every time SpongeBob leaves the house, we see Gary has a whole bunch of hobbies, activities, and things going on that SpongeBob has absolutely no idea about. There's also something to be said about Gary's emotional wisdom. It may have to do with his royal bloodline. He knows when to push SpongeBob and when to hold him back. He never overplays his hand. For a character who communicates entirely in meows, he says a lot. Honestly, I sometimes think Gary is the wisest character in the entire show. He just chooses not to make it anyone else's problem. Which brings me to Squilliam Fancyson. Now, Squilliam is easy to dismiss because he's mostly used as a device to torture Squidward. But if you take a step back and actually look at what this guy has built, there's a reason he has everything Squidward always wanted. Squilliam has a unibrow, a fancy lifestyle, a world-class orchestra, basically a lifestyle that Squidward can only dream about. There has to be genuine ambition and genuine intelligence operating behind that insufferable smug expression. The reason he's here and not higher is simple. He's an absolute jerk about it. All of that intelligence and success, and the primary thing he chooses to do with it is make Squidward feel small, which is honestly such a waste. And when you think about it, it's kind of his blind spot. And blind spots are something we've seen plenty of on this list. But nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to our first character on level 2. Because this next one has a blind spot that sabotages what is genuinely one of the most impressive minds in all of Bikini Bottom. You already know exactly who I'm talking about. Plankton. Let's just establish something first. Plankton is, objectively, one of the most technically gifted minds in all of Bikini Bottom. The man built a supercomputer wife from a CCTV and a bucket of love. He invented a mind control device, an analyzer, a machine that can alter someone's brain, and, perhaps most impressively, a transmogrifier that created an entirely alternate reality. What's more, Plankton has a rich vocabulary, can hold his own against Sandy in a game of chess, and has, on multiple occasions, successfully manipulated entire groups of people despite literally being microscopic. The prison inmates, the cave dwellers, his own army of cousins. This guy is a genuine gift for persuasion when he actually commits to it. But then, Mr. Krabs exists, or more specifically, the Krabby Patty exists. When the plot comes down to it, something in Plankton's brain just short-circuits. Every ounce of that brilliance gets funneled into one singular obsession. And suddenly the same guy who built a parallel universe machine is getting outsmarted by a fry cook and a greedy businessman. Other than that, his emotional intelligence, which was never his strong suit to begin with, completely abandons him when Karen is involved. The amount of times this man has cheated on his wife is frankly baffling. Karen deserves better. Everyone knows it. Plankton knows it. He just can't help himself. There aren't many people I would consider fit for this level. I mean, who could sit on par with Plankton? Squidina has shown some genuine invention skills in the modern era, and there's a real argument for her sitting somewhere around here, but honestly, I haven't seen enough of her episodes to make that call confidently. I'll leave that one to you in the comments. But speaking of characters who are genuinely elite and don't quite fit anywhere on this list cleanly, there are two I've been sitting on this whole video. And the reason is because they're almost too smart for level 2, but something keeps them from claiming the top spot. Like Karen, for example. She has been the actual brain behind most of Plankton's successful operations for the entire run of this show. I mean, let's be honest about that. Plankton just loves to take the credit. And beyond the planning, Karen is sharp in ways that Plankton simply isn't. She sees the bigger picture when Plankton has completely lost himself in the obsession. In a straight-up intelligence comparison between the two of them, Karen might actually have the edge. So, why isn't she at the top? Because Karen has made a choice, consciously or not, to devote everything she has entirely to Plankton. Every plan, every invention, every ounce of that processing power, it all loops back to him. Which is either the most romantic thing in this show or the most tragic, or possibly both simultaneously. And then there's Patrick, the Smart Pants version. This one is a genuinely interesting pick, I think, because that episode gives us maybe the clearest window into what Patrick's brain is actually capable of when it's functioning properly. After accidentally landing headfirst into a field of brain coral, Patrick wakes up with a completely transformed intellect. And immediately, he can think at a level that makes everyone around him uncomfortable. He's doing complex mathematics with Sandy, he's critiquing Squidward's clarinet technique, he's holding conversations that nobody in Bikini Bottom can keep up with. But the moment that intelligence arrives, so does the arrogance. Smart Patrick has zero patience for anyone who can't match his level. He effectively ends his friendship with SpongeBob because they've grown apart. And he ends up completely alone because he simply can't tolerate being around people who think differently from him. Either way, the potential is clearly there. The emotional stability to go with it absolutely is not. Two characters who could have been number one, just not quite. Which leaves only one character left who has everything. Everything we've talked about up to this point has been building to this. The ignorance, the ego, the obsessions, the wasted potential, all of it points to the same conclusion. Level 1 is for the character who has all of it, and actually uses it. Sandy Cheeks. Let's just lay it out. Sandy is a scientist, an inventor, a karate master, a skilled astronaut, and somehow does all of this while living underwater in a dome as the only land creature in Bikini Bottom. Just the logistics of that alone require a level of problem solving that most characters on this show couldn't even begin to approach. Her invention list is genuinely staggering. Rocket ships, teleportation machines, a replicator device, and unlike some of the other brilliant minds on this list, Sandy builds these things as part of her actual job. This is just Tuesday for Sandy Cheeks. But what actually separates Sandy from everyone else, including the likes of Plankton and Karen, is the consistency. Sandy almost never loses herself. When things go wrong, and in Bikini Bottom things go wrong constantly, Sandy is the one who stays level-headed and solves the problem. There's no one better than her when it comes to just assessing, adapting, and getting it done. And her emotional intelligence matches her scientific intelligence in a way that almost no other character on this show can claim. She's a genuine friend that shows up for people. She knows when to be tough and when to be warm. She's the person SpongeBob goes to when he genuinely can't figure something out, and she always comes through. The thing about Sandy that I think gets overlooked is that she chose to be here. She thrived in Bikini Bottom away from everything familiar to her in Texas. I believe that takes more than just book smarts. There you go, I guess. All 7 levels of smartness in Bikini Bottom. Quite a range for a show about a sponge flipping burgers underwater. If you disagree with any of the placements, which I'm sure some of you do, especially about SpongeBob and Squidward, make sure to drop it in the comments. I really do want to hear where you'd move people to. Maybe Karen deserves her own spot. Maybe Tom should be higher. Maybe you think Patrick is secretly a genius and this whole video was wrong. I'm listening. But here's something that's been quietly sitting at the back of my mind while putting this together. We spent this whole video talking about how smart or not smart these characters are. But what if the world they live in has been hiding something from all of us this entire time? Something that changes how you look at Bikini Bottom entirely. Because there are details in this show that have been sitting in plain sight for years, and almost nobody noticed them. That's exactly what I broke down in my previous video. Go check that one out next. Trust me, once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. As always, I'll see you on the next dive.